We have spoken about how organizational culture shape your practice as the workers. But very often we do not consider very much how organizational culture gets to shape the experiences of the people we work with. So we are trying to do this, and we are drawing really on the work of the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. So the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse was appointed in 2013. And its mission was really to investigate the systemic failures of public and private institutions to protect children from sexual abuse and to recommend how to improve laws and policies and practices in responding to child sexual abuse. It really looked at a broad range of institutions, ranging from, religious institutions such as the Roman Catholic Church and, other institutions which deal with children. And the findings of this commission were really, really groundbreaking. They absolutely highlighted the systemic failure in how we protect children and how we even respond to experiences of abuse among children. But more importantly, they highlighted the important role of organizational culture as a leading factor, actually enabling child sexual abuse to happen, but also affecting the responses we provide to the children disclosing experiences of abuse in the different institutions which were subject to the inquiry. Really important consideration also to consider is how the many children who were assaulted in the context of this, work were actually children from a disadvantaged background, because many children who are placed in out of home care and the children who are in those conditions are coming from the most disadvantaged families of this country, families who are living in poverty, families who are experiencing domestic and family violence, and families really in all sorts of situations of vulnerability. But in many cases, these children who were sexually assaulted in these settings got actually limited support in many cases because of a number of factors which I'll be describing on the next slide. So they produced many reports. The Royal Commission actually produced many reports, including this one, which actually is included in the reading for this week, the report called The Role of Organizational Culture in Child Sexual Abuse in Institutional Context. So really encourage you to read that and really embrace this learning opportunity. But some insights from this report include the fact that learning cultures which encouraged workers to raise concerns early, reflected, reflect on uncertainties and seek supervision. These cultures were actually regarded as supportive and to some extent promoting some levels of child safety. A few other insights. There are many more insights in that report which you might want to consider, but a few other insights include the fact that workers who feel supported are more able to cope with the emotional intensity of child sexual abuse work and make balanced decisions. Cultures that emphasized dignity, safety, and accountability created conditions where child sexual abuse was recognized, and that in itself is an insight on how child sexual abuse in institutional settings can actually get to be prevented. They also had the finding that when organizational behavior matches its stated commitments, children and workers experience genuine safety rather than symbolic compliance. So the key theme in this and the other reports of the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse, the key themes have been really around this institutional failure to protect children, the inability to respond correctly when either workers or the children themselves disclose the experiences of sexual abuse. And of course, this failure, the systemic failure to protect children overall and to prevent abuse from happening in the first place. So these are now in many other scholarly work are now theorized in what we are now terming institutional betrayal, in the fact that many institutions, including some of the institutions we know, have not really been able or have not done enough to protect children, and the victims in many cases live with this sense of being betrayed by the very institutions which are supposed to be protecting them. So many other insights come from that report, and it's very good for you to read it and consider these. But they also reflected on how organizational culture actually hindered child safety. And some of the insights coming there include the fact that workers might avoid raising child safety, child sexual abuse concerns to protect themselves from scrutiny and organizational retaliation. And I think this is not something we only observe among workers, we also observe it even among organizations. I think a key finding is also that in many cases, organizations are more concerned about their reputation than they are in some cases than they are concerned about the allegations of child sexual assault, and this again really needs to be challenged. Or even how we spend enough of the organizational efforts trying to prove whether the abuse happened or it didn't happen instead of focusing on the survivor's experience. All of these are, again, institutional, cultural problems which really need to be addressed. Yeah, a few other elements from this report include the fact that an enormous amount of effort can be employed in suppressing emotions. And this suppression can cause all sorts of damage. You'll see organizations where children had tried to disclose abuse and they were either punished or not even responded to or taken seriously. And again, that's extremely, extremely, problematic among these children with this lived experience. So, child sexual abuse requires emotional attunement, and cultures that demand emotional numbing reduce workers' capacity to recognize grooming, coercion, or subtle indicators of child sexual abuse. I think the core findings of the Royal Commission also was around the number of years it took for many victims to even disclose their experiences and be given some help. I think they were estimating among decades, actually took decades among many children in these conditions to first ever disclose their experiences to somebody. And again, this is reflective of, the organizational culture which gets to fail to prevent child sexual abuse from happening, but also to even recognize it when it's being disclosed and take the most appropriate action in responding to the victims and supporting them. So just really another very brief, overview of how organizational culture can be problematic, not only affecting your work as a social worker, but even in many ways affecting the lives and experiences of the clients you work with. So in the next recordings, hopefully the final one, shall be just really reflecting on what can we finally do to challenge problematic organizational work, organizational cultures. Thank you very much and see you soon.